Hello, I'm Brandon. I believe in personal responsibility. I believe that each person has the ability to transform their own life, and that it should not be other people's responsibility to make sure you have everything you need. I will take care of my family, my friends, and close loved ones, but you cannot force me to help anyone whom I do not wish to help. If people don't want to make a difference for themselves, then why should I help them? That's my position. Hello. I believe in the sorry, my name is Marcus. I believe in the collective responsibility. I believe that each person has the ability to transform their own life and that people should be directly involved in bettering the life of the people around them. People don't live in a vacuum. People, even in the most rural of areas, live among others, whether it be on a local, county, state, country, or even continental wide basis. Humans are a social species and always need to do their best to help others out. Nice to meet you, Marcus. I'm curious. How much responsibility do I have to help other people? It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Brandon. It would depend on the situation, but I would hope you agree that the reason we have laws are not just for the benefit of the individuals in society, but for the society as a whole, yes? I would agree. But let's not pretend we don't have massive disagreements on what and how we should help others. Think about it like this. I can come from a background so terrible that I don't stop until I reach a comfortable position in my life. Even if it takes me years to get there, I put in the work. Are you telling me now that I have to go back and help those who didn't have the discipline to create the change in their own life? Hmm. I definitely understand what you're saying, but your phrasing there is a bit disingenuous. It assumes that people who didn't make the change in their life was solely because they did not want to. Think about how much you're glossing over to say something like that. You're painting the picture as black and white, so I reject your framing from the outset. But I congratulate anyone who makes it out of terrible circumstances. I admit that how I said that may have come off as disingenuous, but are you sitting here telling me that you cannot have success in the most terrible of positions? If you're poor, you'll always be poor. If you're sick with debilitated health, then you'll always be that way? Well, no, I don't disagree with what you said. Well, that's my entire position. You can boohoo all you want about how bad life is and how there are things in place that can hold you back, but that's not an excuse to remain a failure. Well, I guess debate over then, right? Well, I would say that yes, no one can hold you back from success except yourself. I agree with this on a philosophical and theoretical basis, but this isn't borne out in the reality we live in. If you're born into a family with less money, you're more likely to have less money in your lifetime. If you're born into a city that's rampant with crime, there isn't a lot of job opportunities, you're more likely to commit crimes yourself. Those are just two examples, but my position is that even though we all hold the keys to our own destiny, we should try to dismantle systems that hold other people down. Just because I can get to a point where I have clean drinking water doesn't mean we hand wave any attempts to get lead out of water. Just because you can beat a video game on the hardest difficulty doesn't mean that everyone who plays the game of life should just go along with any unnecessary difficulties. Well, I agree with all that. I just don't like how you have to take a piece of what I have to help other people. It's not fair to all those who devoted the time to themselves, and now other people just get a free pass because they waited long enough for other people to help them. What the hell kind of incentive does that produce? Yes, we should always be mindful of what we implement in our society and how the general public will respond to it. There will always be some percentage of people who react negatively to even the most beneficial of programs we implement. But I feel like, again, most people want to do better for themselves. Most people want to do better for their kids and for the communities in which they reside. And again, I reject your phrasing. A rising tide raises all boats. You directly benefit from a society that helps your weakest links. If you live in a city where a high, oh, I'm sorry, if you live in a city with a high crime rate, it will increase the chances of you being a victim of any particular crime as long as you live there. If we were to, say, figure out ways to reduce the crime in that area, even if that means taking a small portion of your paycheck, creating additional laws that incentivize contributing to recreational centers and reaching out to youth, etc., then you will benefit from that as well. The idea that the sacrifice you give up to help the society you live in doesn't help you in the broader scale is odd to me. Are you telling me that there are people who could live in a society that improves or in a city that improves, but they would not directly or indirectly benefit as well? No, I'm not saying that. but it's important to recognize the exchange. It's not as simple as you help me, I help you, and we all sing kumbaya. The amount of assistance one person could give could be drastically different from another person, even if they benefit from being in a society that becomes improved. It could still be a net loss because the amount of individual sacrifice could far outweigh the amount of societal improvement. I think we need to be careful of this majority rule of those with more need to give up more disproportionately. Even if I'm a millionaire who makes 10 million a year, you shouldn't be able to take half of what I'll make because, well, he'll be fine anyway, he's still got millions. My objection is to the principle of it. I still pay taxes and contribute, and now you're telling me that I need to contribute more just because I have so much more? I worked for this, and I know that they can too. I feel as if you're treating people as if they are powerless to their circumstances. In a way, yes. I wasn't sure if we would get into the topic of taxes specifically, but even when it comes to paychecks, the more you make, the more they take. When you decide to live in a society, you implicitly agree to having some taxes taken out of your income. You agree that you will give up a portion of individual freedoms, like not being able to walk outside naked past an elementary school, right? The real issue comes as how taxes are taken and what we decide to do with our collective money. But if there are a group of people who are richer than others, for whatever reason, shouldn't they get the most say in how the money is spent? How is that remotely fair? If I have 4 friends and we all decide to pitch in to create a company, but I front half the money to start it, why should I split the revenue evenly with the other 4? My risk and input are far more than my friends. I get what you're saying, but I believe it leaves out quite a bit of information. Some people have so much money that you could even take 90% of all their assets and they will still never have to worry about money for the rest of their lives or even their kids' lives. That amount of wealth concentration can completely erode the health of society as well as any democratic processes. And much like the example you painted with your friends in the company, what's stopping you from exerting your will and completely dominating the company? It also doesn't take into account things that are no longer seen as valuable because there isn't a dollar sign next to it and there isn't a demand in the market for it. You could have someone with $1 million ideas with no way to fund them and someone who is an idiot millionaire. Would you say that because the millionaire in this scenario put up all the money, that they should get the entire return on investment? What about the fact that the millionaire here would not have the opportunity to receive potential revenue had it not been for the person with the idea? Humans seem to have this idea that something is only of value if there's a market for it. Well, if you have an idea that there is no market for, good luck implementing it even with all the money in the world. What good is an idea if it cannot be enacted at all? And just because I will be okay if you take the vast majority of what I have doesn't mean you suddenly have a right to it. It's my money at the end of the day. It's my blood, sweat, and tears that went into everything that I have accumulated. And no, the idiot millionaire in your scenario would not get 100% of the revenue, but he should get at least 80% for having the capital to make it all happen. If it turns out to be extremely successful, the person with the great ideas will become a millionaire as well, and they should be happy with all they have in the same way you're telling me that I have to be. I feel like we're talking past each other a little bit. Agreed. Look, I don't believe in taking large swaths of money from people to the point to where they are destitute. However, the only way you're able to make the money comes from the people in your society, whether it be through voluntary transactions, whether they be workers who are under you, or in the most corrupt and probably common of ways, laws put into place where the rich stay rich and the poor stay poor, such as the lie that is supply side economics, or trickle down economics for those who don't know the exact name. It creates boom-bust cycles in which you privatize the gains and socialize the losses. You can cut taxes for the richest people and the biggest corporations and also deregulate them. And the idea is that by cutting taxes and deregulating, people and companies will be more incentivized to start work and start businesses. With there being more work and businesses out there, then the government will be able to take more in revenue and the government will still be able to pay for programs. But we've seen that this doesn't work in implementation. The richest people end up keeping all the money from the tax cuts, and that money does not help, doesn't end up circulating in the economy, and the government programs will suffer. Also, with less regulation, you could see extra risk for short-term gain, in the same way that the financial crisis of 2008 happened. Or you could even see increased pollution as an example of less regulation. We tried this many times and it led to the Great Depression and the Reagan era recession. My point is that, as of now, we've tried your idea of not taxing the rich as much, and we've seen the widening of wealth inequality and laws that do not take the general public into account. That was quite the soliloquy, and there's a lot to unpack there. I agree that the more you make, the more you take. I'm just saying we need to be careful. I'm not devaluing the impact that other people have on the most quote unquote successful people in our society. No one can be a millionaire in a country where there are only 1,000 people. But people will not want to be as successful because they know chunks of their money will be taken away. Isn't this the same point of view as some people when it comes to college? I would love to go to a college to have a 70,000 per year career, but the amount of debt it would put me in would be comparable to just not going to college and having a 35K a year career. The debt coupled with interest over time will leave me in a similar position. Why go through all the headache if I'm going to end up in a similar ballpark regardless? To add to your point about corruption, I mean, sure, to a certain degree. If your idea is that there is some large conspiracy that in a land of people who choose whom represents them, that each person in Congress, each person in the executive branch, and anyone else with money are all in bed together in order to give themselves more money, could you explain to me why the biggest corporations would want immigration to come to the United States because that means cheaper labor? That cheaper labor leading to cheaper products that everyone in society benefits from so that they can have more money for other bills. Corporations and many people in the government would be diametrically opposed on this issue. For example, you're expecting me to believe that they are able to organize an operation in which thousands of people will have to be in on it? Think about the people who don't want immigration to come here, full stop. And think about the people who want immigration but make it so difficult to come in. This diametrically opposes the beliefs of corporations to bring in cheap labor. So these same people are rigging and working together? That doesn't make sense to me. And to your point about supply side economics, I'm not sure if the concept itself isn't viable, but more so the implementation of it. If we were able to guarantee that the tax cuts for richer people would lead to stronger government programs and the overall well being of society, then I'm sure you would be in favor of it. Likewise, I'm not sure I want tax cuts for your average person. People with less have the ability to figure out what they need to do to get where they want to be. Think about all the people who would use that extra money for superfluous spending. Instead of investing, I'm going to buy this really cool pair of shoes, whether that be investing in yourself or in a company. In the same way you characterize corporations and the rich doing things for short term gain, what about the people who, with some money management, could uplift themselves out of crappy situations? Whether they put themselves there or not, both of us can play this game. I just think that those who have the most out of everyone should be helping other people as well. A millionaire losing 50% of their money will not feel the equal effect as a person making 40K a year will feel as if they lose 50% of their money. It's drastically different. I agree with that completely. But there is a difference between moral obligations and what is morally virtuous. It may in fact be morally virtuous, to help out those with less, but you lose me when you say I am obligated to do so. Because my next question will be, what is preventing you from taking other morally virtuous actions and making them into moral obligations? I don't think cheating on your partner is morally virtuous, but you have a long way to go in convincing me that simply the act of cheating should be met with jail time or a fine. Yeah, I can respect that. And it is a difficult, line to walk, and I believe that we still haven't worked out all the kinks. Things that were morally virtuous in the past were revealed to us to be morally obligatory in the future. And for the record, if I had millions, I wouldn't mind a higher tax than those who aren't as fortunate as me, especially when you look at things like people going bankrupt over healthcare or not being able to afford a $500 emergency. Those are two things that definitely need to be addressed in our country. I just don't want to eclipse other people's personal autonomy in the decisions they make by offering help at every corner. I think I would be more open to the expansion of welfare and nationalized healthcare if there was a concerted effort in creating sub policies that stop people from being leeches on the system. I'm all for helping people who want to help themselves, but I am in no way for enabling those who do not want to help themselves. I completely understand your position now, better than I did before. I don't think you're selfish, and I don't think you're calling me an enabler. Quick question though. Those with depression can find it difficult to lift themselves out of their depression. Some of them have such a level of mental unhealthiness where they don't even want to help themselves. Should we not help these people then? And how would you be able to tell if someone is truly trying to change their life but are just unsuccessful? We'll have to save the mental health discussion for another day. I think your depression question was tongue in cheek, but as far as the greater endeavor of determining just how we measure a person's attempt at a better life, that's going to require some deeper thinking on my part. The same is true for me. I don't have all the answers on my part, but it would seem that this is the most contentious factor for many people. No one wants to help someone who doesn't want to help themselves, but all of us need help at some point. This was a great discussion, and I'm glad we kept it cordial. Likewise, I hope to have more talks like this in the future.